The morning they read my grandmother's will, I walked out with a crumbling house no one wanted, and my father's voice still ringing in my ears. She gave you what you could handle. 4 months later, a foreman called me at 10 at night and said 7 words that changed everything. "Ma'am, we found something inside the wall." When I pulled up to the house, police lights were already spinning in the driveway, and the steel box they pulled from behind a false wall had my initials engraved on the lid. What was inside didn't just prove my family wrong, it proved them criminal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I go on, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story genuinely speaks to you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. My name is Elise Harrow. I'm 28, and this is the story of the worst thing my family ever did to me, and how my dead grandmother made sure they'd answer for it. Let me take you back to last September, to a Sunday dinner where I sat at the far end of the table, close to the kitchen, close enough to clear the plates. Every Sunday at 6, the Harrow family sits down for dinner. That is not an invitation. It is a summons. The house is colonial. White columns, black shutters, manicured lawn in Fairfield County, Connecticut. From the street, it looks like a family portrait. From the inside, it feels like a courtroom where the verdict was decided before anyone sat down. My father, Richard, takes the head of the table. My mother, Vivian, sits to his right. My sister, Celeste, to his left. I sit at the far end, near the kitchen, close enough to clear plates. Tonight, Vivian is glowing. Celeste got promoted, senior account director. She sets down her wine glass like she's placing a trophy. Richard nods slowly, the way a man does when he believes he built something. "That's the Boston office?" he asks. "Regional lead," Celeste says. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. The room is already smiling for her. I wait for a pause. "I helped a family get permanent housing this week. Single mom, 2 kids. They'd been in a shelter for..." "That's nice, sweetie." Vivian doesn't look up. "Celeste, tell your father about the Boston account." The conversation moves on. I cut my chicken. After dinner, I wash the dishes alone. Celeste leaves without saying goodbye. My parents retreat to the living room. No one asks me to stay. On the drive home, my phone buzzes. A voicemail. My grandmother Margaret's voice, warm and unhurried. "Ellie, I made your lemon cake today. Come get it before your mother does." She calls every week. She remembers my favorite recipe. She asks about my cases, my clients, my bad days. She once told me something I didn't understand at the time. We were sitting on the porch of her old house in Ridgefield, the one she grew up in, the one nobody visits anymore. She looked at the walls like they were holding a conversation only she could hear, and she said, "There are things I've hidden in this house, Elise. When the time comes, you'll understand." I thought she meant memories. She said that 3 months before she died. And now I know, she didn't mean memories at all. The call comes at 2:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. A nurse at St. Vincent's, voice careful and rehearsed. "Ms. Harrow, I'm calling about your grandmother, Margaret Harrow. She passed in her sleep approximately 1 hour ago. I'm very sorry." I don't remember hanging up. I remember my shoes. I put them on the wrong feet and didn't notice until I was already on the highway. 40 minutes later, I pull into the hospital lot. 2 cars are already there, my father's black Audi, and a silver sedan I don't recognize. Inside, I expect to find my family at her bedside. Instead, I find them in the hallway. Richard, Vivian, and a man in a gray suit I have never seen before. They're standing in a tight circle near the vending machines. The man is holding a leather folder. My father is nodding. Celeste is leaning against the wall a few feet away, scrolling her phone. Her eyes are dry. No one notices me walk past them. I enter the room alone. Grandma Margaret lies still, hands folded. The monitor is off. The room is quiet in a way that doesn't feel empty. It feels held. Like she just finished a sentence and is waiting for someone to sit down. On her wrist, she's still wearing the silver bracelet. Thin, tarnished, simple. She wore it every single day for 40 years. I close my hand around it gently and hold on. When I step back into the hallway, Richard is buttoning his coat. We need to discuss the estate, he says. Soon. No hand on my shoulder. No. Are you okay? Vivian adjusts her scarf. Your grandmother was old, Elise. It was time. Let's focus on what matters now. I look at the man in the gray suit. He avoids my eyes. I ask the nurse if I can keep the bracelet. She nods. Vivian glances at it. It's just costume jewelry, Elise. Take it if you want. I put it in my coat pocket and press my hand flat against it the entire drive home. It's warm, like she just took it off. Later, I'll learn the man in the gray suit was a lawyer named Gordon Blake, someone my grandmother never hired, someone who appeared at a hospital at 3 a.m. before the family was even notified. But I don't know that yet. Not tonight. Tonight, I just hold the bracelet and drive. The funeral is held at a small stone church in Weston. More than 80 people come. Margaret Harrow was the kind of woman who remembered your children's names and your dog's birthday. People loved her without trying. Richard delivers the eulogy. He stands behind the lectern in a navy suit, voice steady, hands open. My mother-in-law was a pillar of this family, he says. She believed in loyalty. She believed in legacy. He pauses for effect. We will honor her by staying together. I sit in the second row and count the lies. Richard visited my grandmother twice in the last 2 years. Both times he left within the hour. After the service, mourners gather in the church courtyard. I stand near the back, holding a cup of coffee I haven't touched. People shake my hand. Most of them move quickly to Vivian, who is stationed near the entrance, accepting condolences like a diplomat. Then a hand touches my elbow. Soft, steady. Dorothy Callahan, 81 years old. My grandmother's closest friend for over 5 decades. She pulls me aside, near the hedgerow, and speaks low. Your grandmother talked about you all the time, Elise. Every week. Her eyes are red but focused. She was worried. She said she took precautions. Precautions for what? Dorothy opens her mouth, then closes it. Vivian is walking toward us, smiling wide, arms outstretched. Dorothy, thank you so much for coming. Vivian wraps her in a hug that lasts exactly long enough for a photo. We're all grieving together. Dorothy steps back. She gives me one last look. The kind of look that says, not here. Not now. But soon. That evening, Celeste posts a photo from the service on Instagram. She's standing beside the casket flowers, head tilted, eyes soft. The caption reads, "Rest in peace, Grandma. We were blessed to be your family." She doesn't tag me. She never has. I sit in my apartment and stare at the bracelet on my nightstand. Precautions? What kind of precautions does a woman take when she's afraid of her own family? 3 weeks after the funeral, we are summoned to the office of Gordon Blake, attorney at law. A name I'd never heard before Grandma's death. A man who now, apparently, holds the keys to everything she left behind. The office is cold. Beige walls, a conference table too long for 5 people. Richard sits at one end, legs crossed, hands clasped. Vivian beside him, back straight. Celeste across from me, eyes on her phone. Blake opens a leather folder. He reads without looking up. To Richard and Vivian Harrow, management of the family trust, valued at approximately $1.8 million, including oversight of all liquid assets and investment accounts. To Celeste Harrow, the primary residence in Weston, Connecticut, along with the associated investment portfolio. To Elise Harrow, the property located at 14 Birch Hollow Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut. I wait for more. There is no more. 14 Birch Hollow is my grandmother's childhood home. A house that has been abandoned for over a decade. Roof leaking, walls cracking, electrical system condemned by the county 2 years ago. Everyone in this room knows that. Richard turns to me. His face is the careful blank of a man who rehearsed this moment. Your grandmother knew your limitations, Elise. She gave you what you could handle. Vivian folds her hands. At least you have a roof. Not everyone gets that. Celeste does not look up from her phone. I stare at Blake. My grandmother told me she would take care of me. She said it to my face. This is not what she wanted. Richard leans forward. Are you calling your dead grandmother a liar? The room holds still. Blake closes the folder. I stand. I pick up my coat. I walk out without looking at any of them. In the parking garage, I sit in my car for 11 minutes before I can turn the key. My hands are shaking. I press them flat against the steering wheel until the shaking stops. Then I notice something. The address. 14 Birch Hollow Road, Ridgefield. The same house. The same porch. The same walls Grandma once looked at and said, "There are things I've hidden in this house, Elise." I turn the key. I start driving. The house at 14 Birch Hollow Road looks like it lost a fight with time and gave up halfway through. I park on the gravel shoulder and sit in the car for a full minute, just looking at it. Victorian bones. Wraparound porch, sagging at the left corner. 3 of the front windows are cracked. The gutters hang like loose teeth. Weeds have taken the yard up to my waist. A neighbor across the street pulls back a curtain, watches me, and lets it drop. I push through the front door. It groans but opens. Inside, dust, mildew, silence. The floors are soft in places, rotten from years of rain leaking through the roof. The staircase railing is missing half its spindles. A bird has nested somewhere in the ceiling. But then, the kitchen. On the wall, behind a layer of grime, there's a framed photograph. Small, faded. A young woman holding a baby, standing in front of this very house. The yard is clean. The porch is white. The woman is smiling. I turn it over. On the back, written in ink that has bled with age. For my Elise. The house remembers. Grandma wrote this. But when? I set the photo on the counter and call the one person my coworker at the nonprofit swore by for renovations. Frank Delaney answers on the 3rd ring. He comes out the same afternoon. Walks the whole house in silence. Tests the floors with his boot. Runs a hand along the walls. When he's done, he stands on the porch and pulls off his cap. 60, 70,000 minimum. You got that kind of money? I have $23,000 in savings and a credit line I haven't touched. It's not enough. It is everything I have. I'll make it work, I say. Frank studies me, then nods once. I'll cut where I can. You're good for it. His crew starts the following Monday. They strip wallpaper, pull up flooring, begin demolishing damaged walls. On the 2nd day, Frank calls me over to the living room. He's standing in front of the far wall, flashlight pointed at the exposed framing. "This wall's weird," he says. "Double-layered. Someone built a false wall here on purpose." I stare at the gap between the 2 layers. Dark, hollow, intentional. "Keep going," I tell him. Frank looks at me, then back at the wall. "Lady, someone didn't want this wall touched, but it's your house." He picks up the sledgehammer. Richard calls the next evening. I let it ring twice before I answer. "Elise." His voice is measured, practiced. "That house is a money pit. You know that. I'll buy it from you. 15,000 cash. At least you'll walk away with something. $15,000. For the house my grandmother grew up in. The house she told me to remember." "No," I say. Silence. Then, "You're making a mistake." I hang up. The next morning, a text from Vivian. 3 paragraphs. The first begins, "You're tearing this family apart, Elise." The second, "Your grandmother would be ashamed of how you're acting." The third, "All we did was follow her wishes. Hand over whatever you found and we can move past this as a family." She signs off with a crying face emoji. I read it once. I do not reply. 2 days later, Celeste calls. First time in months. "Just take the money and move on. Why are you making this weird?" "Celeste, you got the house in Weston. You got the investments. Grandma wouldn't have left me a ruin. You know that." A pause. "Because I earned it. I was there for Grandma." Celeste visited my grandmother 3 times in the last year. I know because Grandma kept a guest book by the door. Then something worse happens. My credit union calls. A man identifying himself as my father contacted them, asking about the status and details of my personal loan. "We didn't disclose anything," the loan officer says, "but we wanted to verify." "Did you authorize this inquiry?" I did not. They are not just waiting for me to fail. They are trying to make it happen. That night, I sit on the porch of 14 Birch Hollow. The wood creaks under me. Somewhere inside, Frank's crew has left their tools stacked neatly against the exposed framing. I call Frank. Speed it up, I say. Tear out every old wall. All of them. Frank pauses. You expecting to find something? My grandmother told me the house remembers. I want to know what it remembers. Frank lets out a long breath. All right. We start the living room false wall tomorrow. I hang up and stare at the dark yard. The wind pushes through the broken windows behind me, and the house groans like it's been holding its breath. Thursday, 9:47 p.m. I'm sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor, sorting receipts for the renovation, when my phone lights up. Frank Delaney. He never calls this late. Ma'am. His voice is different. Low, tight, like he's cupping the phone close. We found something behind the false wall in the living room. I can't explain it over the phone. What is it? I called the police, ma'am. They said don't touch anything. A beat. And, don't tell your parents about this. Don't tell your sister. Just come. I don't ask why. Something in his voice tells me not to waste time on questions. The drive from my apartment to Ridgefield takes 34 minutes. Tonight, in the rain, it takes 26. My wipers beat a rhythm I can't follow. My hands grip the wheel at 10 and 2 and don't let go. I think about what could be behind that wall. Money, drugs, something criminal, something buried. My mind cycles through every terrible possibility and lands nowhere. The house appears through the rain. 2 police cruisers are parked out front, lights spinning blue and red across the wet trees. Frank stands on the porch, cap in his hands, face pale under the porch light. Inside, he says. I follow him through the front door. 2 officers are in the living room. One is photographing the scene. The other stands back, arms folded, watching. The false wall is open. Framing exposed. Plaster dust on the floor. And there, sitting in the hollow between the 2 layers of wall, a steel box. Medium-sized, maybe 2 feet by 1 foot. Coated in decades of dust. On the lid, etched into the metal in deliberate, even strokes, are 2 letters. E, H, my initials. I kneel down. My fingers hover over the engraving. The dust is undisturbed except where Frank's flashlight beam has traced its edges. My grandmother put this here, behind a false wall, inside a house she gave only to me, engraved with my initials, locked with a combination I haven't tried yet. And she did it long before she died. How long has this been waiting? The officer with the camera steps back. It's your property, ma'am. You can open it. We just need to document what's inside. I kneel in front of the box. The combination lock has 4 digits. I stare at it and think about every number my grandmother ever made me memorize. Her phone number, her address, her recipe measurements. Then I try the simplest one. My birthday, March 19th. The lock clicks open. The lid is heavy. I lift it with both hands. Inside, the box is divided into 3 neat compartments, each lined with cloth. The kind of careful you only give to things that matter. The first compartment holds a thick envelope, sealed with wax. I break it open. Inside, a handwritten document, 4 pages, on ruled paper. At the top of the first page, in my grandmother's unmistakable script, Last Will and Testament of Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow, dated 18 months before the will Gordon Blake read in his office. 2 witness signatures at the bottom, a notary stamp. This is the real will, the original. The second compartment holds a letter, 4 pages, also handwritten. The first line reads, My dearest Elise, if you are reading this, then they did exactly what I feared they would do. My vision blurs. I press the heel of my hand against my eye and keep reading. She writes about Richard, about the trust, about the pressure, about the fear. They have been taking from me for 2 years. I could not stop them alone, so I prepared. The third compartment holds a smaller envelope, stamped private in red ink. I reach for it. Ma'am. The officer steps forward. That one. We'd recommend a lawyer look at it first. Some of the contents may be evidentiary. I pull my hand back. I look at the two officers, then at Frank, who is standing in the doorway gripping the frame. "What's in there?" Frank asks. I hold up the first document. My hands are trembling, but my voice is not. Her real will. The one they tried to erase. The officer takes a photo. I read the terms. The real will leaves the trust, all of it, and the Weston house to me. Celeste receives this house in Ridgefield and $50,000. Richard and Vivian each receive $1. And at the bottom, in Grandma's hand. So they know I did not forget them. I simply did not forgive. The room is silent. Rain hits the window. Frank lets out a breath he's been holding since I walked in. I fold the letter carefully and press it against my chest. The paper smells faintly of lavender, the same scent that lived in every room she ever occupied. "They will tell you I didn't love you enough to give you more," she wrote. "The truth is, I loved you too much to let them take everything." I stay on that floor for a long time. The next morning, a detective from the Ridgefield Police Department calls. His name is Sergeant Ortiz. His voice is flat, professional, and careful. "Ms. Harrow, we open the third envelope with a forensic tech present. I need you to come in." I'm at the station by 10. Ortiz walks me through what they found. Bank statements, dozens of them, printed, highlighted, annotated in my grandmother's handwriting. They trace transfers from her trust account to a personal account under Richard Harrow's name, spread over 23 months. The total, approximately $340,000. Each transfer has an authorization form attached. Each form bears my grandmother's signature. "Except," Ortiz says, turning one of the pages toward me, "your grandmother wrote notes in the margins." He points, in pencil, small and steady. "I did not sign this. This is not my handwriting." She had requested duplicate statements from the bank, mailed to a private P.O. box. She had tracked every fraudulent transfer. She had built the file herself. "There's also this." Ortiz slides another document across the table. A request to change the trustee and legal representative of her estate, filed 6 months before her death. The signature is Margaret's name, but the handwriting is wrong. Even I can see it. "We've forwarded everything to the district attorney's office," Ortiz says. "This goes beyond a civil dispute, ma'am." I sit in the parking lot afterward and call the one person my coworker said could handle something like this. Eleanor Voss, a state litigation attorney. A woman who, I'm told, has never lost a probate fraud case in 12 years. She answers on the first ring. I talk for 9 minutes straight. She listens without interrupting. When I finish, she says, "Your grandmother didn't just leave you a house. She left you a case. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything." I drive home with the windows down even though it's cold. The air feels different. Not lighter, clearer. The police mentioned one more thing before I left. The third envelope also contained what Ortiz called additional documents related to family history. They've referred those to a federal agency for review. I asked which agency. "The FBI," he said. I didn't ask why. I wasn't sure I was ready for that answer. Word travels fast in a small town. Someone saw the police cruisers parked in front of 14 Birch Hollow. Someone told someone, and someone told Richard. He calls the next evening. No greeting, no warm-up. "Whatever you think you found in that house, it means nothing." His voice is tight, controlled, but underneath, something I've never heard before. Fear. "I have the best lawyers in this county. You'll lose everything, including that shack." I say nothing. He hangs up. An hour later, Vivian's turn. She calls sobbing. The performance is pitch perfect. Cracked voice, shuddering breath, the carefully timed pause before each sentence. "Elise, you're destroying this family. Grandma would be heartbroken. Whatever you think you have, just give it back. We can fix this. We're your parents." I let her finish. Then I say, "Good night, Mom," and end the call. Celeste sends a text at midnight. 4 words. "You're delusional. Dad's lawyer will bury you." 2 days later, it arrives. The formal response. Gordon Blake walks into Eleanor Voss's office carrying a settlement proposal. His hands are steady, but his eyes are not. My client is offering a generous resolution, he says. Elise keeps the Ridgefield property. She receives an additional $50,000. In exchange, she signs a non-disclosure agreement and surrenders all materials recovered from the property. Eleanor doesn't blink. My client doesn't negotiate when forged documents are on the table. Blake stands, buttons his jacket. At the door, he pauses and says, "Not to me, but to Eleanor. Between you and me, tell her to be careful. Richard Harrow knows people in this county." The door closes behind him. I turn to Eleanor. What did he mean, knows people? Eleanor sets down her pen, folds her hands. Her expression doesn't shift, but something behind her eyes hardens. It means we might not get a fair trial here. I think about my grandmother, alone in her house, writing notes in the margins of bank statements no one was supposed to see. She knew. She knew the system might not protect her. And still, she prepared. Then we go somewhere that will be fair, I say. Eleanor nods. Once, like she was waiting for me to say it. Eleanor files the initial challenge with the probate court of Fairfield County. The motion is clean. Void the Blake will. Recognize the handwritten original. Investigate the trust transfers. 2 weeks later, the ruling comes back. Motion denied. Judge Harold Kern writes, insufficient evidence to overturn a properly filed and executed will. Eleanor calls me from her car. I can hear her breathing, slow, deliberate, the way someone breathes when they are choosing their words very carefully. The judge didn't review the forensic analysis. He didn't schedule a hearing. He issued a summary denial in 48 hours. She pauses. That doesn't happen. I ask the question I already know the answer to. Why? Judge Kern and your father are both members of the Fairfield Country Club. I pulled the sign-in logs. They've had dinner together 3 times in the past month. The floor tilts. Not because I'm surprised, because I realize this is exactly what my grandmother warned about. They did exactly what I feared they would do. The walls are closing. The bank won't extend my credit. The renovation is half done, and the bills are stacking. Frank has agreed to delay payment, but I can hear the strain in his voice when he says, "Take your time." He means it. But time costs money neither of us has. That night, I sit on the floor of the Ridgefield house. Half-gutted walls, exposed wiring, the smell of sawdust and something older underneath. I unfold Grandma's letter and read the line I keep coming back to. Don't let them make you small, Elise. The truth is heavy, but it will hold you up when nothing else can. I sat in that house and wondered, did she know it would be this hard? Did she know the system itself would push back? Have you ever held something true in your hands and watched every door close anyway? If you have, I'd love to hear how you kept going. Tell me in the comments. Eleanor calls the next morning. We're going federal. I'm making a call. Federal, I repeat. The word feels enormous. Bank fraud is a federal crime. Elder financial abuse across state-managed trusts, federal jurisdiction, and if the local bench is compromised, we have grounds to escalate. Her voice is steel. This isn't revenge, Elise. This is procedure. I close my eyes. I think of Grandma's handwriting. Steady, certain, even at the end. Make the call, I say. Eleanor contacts the FBI field office in New Haven. She presents the case in writing. Forged legal documents, fraudulent trust transfers totaling $340,000, a compromised local judge, and evidence collected by the victim herself before her death. 1 week later, I receive a phone call from a number I don't recognize. Ms. Harrow, my name is Marcus Whitfield. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI. I've been asked to consult on your case due to its complexity. His voice is low, unhurried, precise, the kind of voice that makes you listen without knowing why. We meet at a cafe in Westport. He's already seated when I arrive. A man of 71, silver-haired, wearing a brown tweed jacket over a pressed shirt. Reading glasses on the table. Coffee untouched. His eyes are sharp, but there's warmth in them. The kind of warmth that takes decades to earn. He doesn't start with the case. He starts with her. Tell me about your grandmother. I wasn't expecting that. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. So I talk. I tell him about the lemon cake, the Sunday phone calls, the way she could make a room feel safe just by sitting in it, the porch in Ridgefield where she'd sit with her coffee and say nothing and somehow say everything. Marcus listens. He doesn't take notes. He doesn't interrupt. Once, just once, he looks away, and I see something move behind his expression. Not professional distance. Something closer to grief. She was remarkable, he says quietly. He tells me the FBI is opening a federal investigation. Richard and Vivian will be subpoenaed. The forged documents and bank records will be analyzed by federal forensics. This will go to court, he says. And it won't be Judge Kern's court. We stand to leave. He reaches out and takes my hand, both of his around mine. He holds it a moment longer than a stranger would. His palms are warm. His grip is careful. He looks at me with an expression I can't name. You have her eyes, he says. I smile, confused. People say I look like my mother. No, Marcus says. You look like Margaret. He lets go and walks to his car. I stand on the sidewalk watching him leave, and something tugs at the back of my mind. A name I should recognize. Whitfield. Marcus Whitfield. My grandmother's maiden name, before she married, was Whitfield. I stand there for a long time after his car disappears. Richard doesn't wait for the subpoena. He goes on a fence. A story appears in the Fairfield County Register, the kind of article that reads like journalism but smells like a press release. The headline, Local Family in Turmoil as Youngest Daughter Contests Mother's Estate. Richard is quoted, Elise is going through a difficult period after losing her grandmother. We only want to help her. He sounds reasonable, caring, even. That's what makes it dangerous. Vivian takes it to social media, a public Facebook post, a family photo from Christmas 2 years ago, all 4 of them in matching sweaters. Grandma Margaret in the center. Caption, Our family is being torn apart by greed and false accusations. All I ever wanted was to keep us together. Please pray for us. 47 shares. Over 100 sympathetic comments. I am not tagged. I am not mentioned. But everyone knows. At work, my supervisor pulls me aside. Elise, I support you. But a few donors have asked questions. Try to keep this private. She means well. But there is no private. Richard made sure of that. Then comes the real strike. Celeste calls, voice flat. Dad says if you don't drop this by Friday, he'll petition to have you declared mentally unfit. I think she's bluffing. She isn't. 3 days later, Eleanor forwards me the filing. A petition for mental competency evaluation. Submitted to the Fairfield Probate Court. The petitioner is not Richard. It's Vivian. Her statement reads, My daughter has a documented history of anxiety and depression. She has made erratic decisions following her grandmother's death. I am concerned for her safety and her ability to manage legal and financial matters. I did go to therapy 2 years ago. For grief. For the weight of being invisible in my own family. Vivian knew because I told her, hoping she'd understand. She saved it. Not to help me. To use it. Eleanor calls within the hour. They're trying to strip your legal standing. If they succeed, you can't sue. You can't testify. You become a ward, not a plaintiff. Her voice is tight. We need to move. Fast. I stare at Vivian's signature on the petition. Neat. Centered. No hesitation in the strokes. My own mother filed paperwork to call me insane, to protect the money she stole. I call Dr. Patterson the same afternoon. She's been my therapist on and off for 2 years. The person who helped me name the patterns I grew up in. Control, dismissal, conditional love. She listens to everything. Then she says, I'll have the evaluation letter on your attorney's desk by morning. The letter is 3 pages. Clinical, thorough, unambiguous. Elise Harrow demonstrates full cognitive and emotional competence. There is no clinical basis for a competency challenge. Her decision-making is consistent, informed, and self-directed. Eleanor files the rebuttal within 48 hours, attaching Dr. Patterson's evaluation and a motion to dismiss Vivian's petition. She simultaneously files a request to transfer jurisdiction to the U.S. District Court for the District of Connecticut, federal level. The FBI backs the transfer with a supporting brief. The Fairfield Probate Court doesn't fight it. Judge Kern recuses himself before he can be forced out. The case moves up. That evening, I do something I've never done before. I call Richard directly. Not to plead, not to argue, to inform. Dad. My voice is level, quiet. I know what you and Mom did. I have the original will, I have the bank records, I have the forged signatures. The FBI is involved now. I pause. Not for drama, for breath. You can stop, or this goes public. Your choice. Silence. 10 seconds. 15. You're going to regret this, Elise. You have no idea what you're starting. I didn't start this, I say. Grandma did. She knew you'd come for her money. She just made sure I'd have the proof. I hang up. My hands are trembling, but not the way they used to. This isn't fear. This is the vibration of something finally shifting into place. Eleanor calls that night with one more piece. FBI forensics completed their analysis of Blake's will. The handwriting expert's conclusion: 99.7% probability that the signature on Blake's document was not written by Margaret Whitfield Harrow. 99.7. Not a shadow of a doubt, not a sliver of ambiguity. Grandma signed her real will, someone else signed the fake one. And I have both. Dorothy Callahan calls on a Sunday morning. She's seen the article in the Register. She's seen Vivian's Facebook post. And she's done being quiet. Come to my house, Elise. There are things I should have told you at the funeral. Her living room smells like bergamot and old paper. She sits across from me in a wingback chair, hands folded on a quilted blanket across her lap. On the side table, a framed photograph of her and Grandma, two young women, mid-20s, laughing on a dock somewhere. Your grandmother had a life before Richard, Dorothy says. Before your mother's father. Before Harold. There was someone else. She tells me about a young man named Marcus. They met in the early 70s when Margaret was barely 20. She loved him in a way that didn't fit the family's plans. They made her end it. Dorothy pauses. The reasons were of that time. I won't dress them up. What happened to him? He disappeared. Moved away. Margaret married Harold the following year. She never mentioned Marcus again. Not for decades. Dorothy looks at the photo on the side table. Then one day, maybe 15 years ago, she told me she'd found him, that they'd been in contact. She said, "He never stopped looking for me, Dorothy. And I never stopped wishing he hadn't." Dorothy reaches behind her chair and pulls out a small wooden box. Margaret gave this to me a year before she died. She said, "Give it to Elise if something happens." Only Elise. Inside, a black and white photograph. A young woman and a young man, standing arm in arm in front of a building I don't recognize. She's wearing a white dress. He's in a dark suit. On the back, written in faded ink, M and M, 1974. Margaret and Marcus. I hold the photo closer. The man is young, mid-20s, with sharp cheekbones and dark, steady eyes. I've seen those eyes before. Last week, across a cafe table in Westport. Marcus Whitfield. Dorothy, I say slowly. My grandmother's maiden name was Whitfield. Dorothy nods. She doesn't say anything else. She doesn't need to. I stare at the photograph until the faces blur. You have her eyes, Marcus said to me. Not a compliment, a recognition. She planned everything, dear, Dorothy says from her chair. She was the smartest woman I ever knew. She pauses and her voice drops, and the most heartbroken. I drive home with the photograph on the passenger seat. The pieces are rearranging themselves in my head, and I can feel the shape of something I'm not ready to say out loud yet. That night, I sit at my kitchen table with three things in front of me: the photograph from Dorothy, the silver bracelet from Grandma's wrist, and the steel box I brought home from Ridgefield. The bracelet first. I turn it over under the lamp. I've worn it almost every day since the hospital, but I've never examined it closely. The outside is plain, smooth, tarnished, unremarkable. Vivian was right about one thing. It looks like costume jewelry. But when I tilt it under the light, I see it. On the inside of the clasp, etched in letters so small I need a magnifying glass, a sequence of numbers. September 17th, 1974. September 17th, 1974. The same year as the photograph. M&M, 1974. A date, a code. Hidden in plain sight for 40 years. I carry the steel box to the table. When the police processed it, they documented the 3 compartments. But I remember, there was a second lock underneath the main compartment. A smaller combination panel built into the base. The officers tried a few combinations and moved on. They left it for me. I input the numbers. 09171974. The base panel releases with a soft click. Inside the hidden compartment, a single document, folded in thirds, protected by a plastic sleeve. I pull it out carefully. A birth certificate, yellowed with age, state of Connecticut. Name, Margaret Ann Whitfield. Date of birth, June 3rd, 1952. Mother, Ruth Ellen Whitfield. Father, Marcus James Whitfield. Marcus isn't her ex-lover. Marcus is her father. I set the birth certificate down and pick up the last item in the compartment. A folded letter. Grandma's handwriting again. This one shorter. 2 paragraphs. Elise, Marcus Whitfield is my father. He was forced to give me up when I was 3 years old. The court took me from him under circumstances that were unjust and unforgivable. I found him when I was 40. We kept the secret to protect you, because Richard would have used it against us. When you meet him, and you will, know that he is family, real family, the kind that doesn't take, the kind that waits. I read it twice, 3 times. I hold the paper up to the light as if the words might rearrange into something easier to absorb. Marcus Whitfield, the retired FBI agent helping my case, is my great-grandfather. My grandmother's father. The man who lost his daughter to the system 70 years ago and spent his life building himself into someone who could never be dismissed again. And my grandmother hid the proof inside a bracelet I've been wearing every day without knowing. I pick up my phone. I dial Marcus. He answers on the first ring, like he's been waiting. I found the bottom compartment, I say. I know who you are. The line is quiet, not the silence of surprise, the silence of a man who has been carrying something for a very long time and has just been told he can set it down. I was waiting for you to find it, Marcus says. That was Margaret's plan, not mine. We meet at the Ridgefield house the next morning. He arrives early. I find him standing on the porch, looking out at the yard with both hands in the pockets of his tweed jacket. And for a moment, I see him the way Grandma must have. Patient, steady, still here, after all of it. We sit at the kitchen table. He tells me everything. In 1955, when Margaret was 3, her mother, Marcus's wife, Ruth, died of pneumonia. Marcus was 23. He worked part-time at a hardware store and had no savings. Ruth's family petitioned for custody. The court agreed. Margaret was taken. Marcus was told he could visit. Then the visit stopped. Then the address changed. Then she was gone. I spent 15 years looking for her, he says. I joined the bureau because I wanted access to systems most people couldn't reach. I told myself it was about justice, but it was about her. He found Margaret in 1992. She was 40. They met in a park in Hartford, sat on a bench for 3 hours, and said almost nothing. She held my hand, he says. That was enough. They kept the reunion secret. Richard married Vivian the year before I found Margaret. Margaret said he was already asking about her finances. She said, if he finds out about you, he'll use it. He'll say I was mentally unstable, reconnecting with a father I was taken from. He'll twist it. Marcus looks at me. His eyes are wet, but his voice does not waver. When Margaret called me 3 years ago and said, he's going to steal everything when I die, I made her a promise. I told her, I couldn't save my daughter from that family, but I would save my granddaughter. I don't speak. I don't need to. I reach across the table and take his hand. He tells me one more thing. Margaret had sent him copies of the trust documents and bank records before she died. A backup, in case something happened to the box. But the originals needed to come from Elise. A copy sent by a deceased person has evidentiary limits, he explains. The originals, recovered by the rightful heir from her own property. That's ironclad. That was the plan. Not Marcus's, not Eleanor's, Margaret's. She couldn't fight them while she was alive. So she built a case from beyond the grave and trusted the one person they underestimated to find it. Me. I sit in that kitchen for a long time after Marcus leaves. The bracelet is on my wrist. The birth certificate is on the table. Outside the yard is quiet. For the first time in 28 years, I understand what family is supposed to feel like. It doesn't demand. It doesn't perform. It doesn't keep score. It waits. Eleanor's office, Wednesday afternoon. 3 chairs pulled around her desk. Eleanor, Marcus, and me. A whiteboard behind her covered in dates, names, and red arrows connecting them. Here's where we stand, Eleanor says. Federal Court, District of Connecticut. Not a will contest. A criminal referral accompanied by a civil probate challenge. She taps the board. Charges under consideration: forgery of legal documents, bank fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, elder financial abuse, conspiracy. Marcus leans forward. The FBI has completed the forensic review. Handwriting analysis on the Blake will, confirmed forgery. The trust transfer authorizations, confirmed forgery. 6 separate documents bearing Margaret's name, none written by her hand. Eleanor nods. We also have Margaret's video deposition. I turn. Video? Marcus opens a folder. Your grandmother recorded a sworn statement 8 months before she passed. She did it at Dorothy Callahan's home, with Dorothy and a notary present. She knew if the box was ever found, the opposition would argue she was confused or coerced. He slides a USB drive across the desk. This is Margaret Harrow, of sound mind, stating clearly that any will produced by Gordon Blake is fraudulent. I press my fingers against my temples. She thought of everything. Richard knows the hearing date, Eleanor continues. He's been calling everyone. His lawyers, the old judge, people at the club. But this is federal now. Kern has no jurisdiction. Richard's connections end at the county line. That evening, Vivian calls. Not crying this time, cold. If you go through with this, you will have no family left. Is that what you want? I hold the phone and look at the silver bracelet on my wrist, at the photo of Marcus and Margaret on my kitchen counter, at the letter that begins, My dearest Elise. I haven't had a family in a long time, Mom. I just didn't know it yet. She hangs up first. I sit in the Ridgefield house that night. The renovation is half finished. New floorboards in the hallway. Fresh paint in the kitchen. The living room wall is still open where the box was found. I asked Frank to leave it. A reminder. Tomorrow I walk into a federal courtroom. I will carry my grandmother's handwriting in my bag, her bracelet on my wrist, and her father beside me. Tomorrow, they'll see me. Not the version they created. The real one. The morning of the hearing, I wake at 5 and find an email sent at 3:47 a.m. from Richard. Not to me alone, to every family email address he has. Aunts, uncles, cousins, 26 recipients. Family. It breaks my heart to write this. Elise is using fabricated documents and a stranger's influence to extort this family. She has a history of mental health struggles and has been manipulated by outside parties seeking access to Mother's estate. We ask for your prayers and your understanding as we fight to protect Margaret's true wishes. By 7, my phone has 4 missed calls. Aunt Karen, Uncle Dale, a cousin I haven't spoken to since Thanksgiving 2019. They don't leave messages, but I know the questions they want to ask. I silence the phone and drive. The federal courthouse in New Haven is limestone and glass. Solemn, indifferent to personal drama. I park 3 blocks away and walk. At the entrance, I see them. Richard, in a charcoal suit, postures straight, nodding at a reporter from the register. He smiles for a photograph. Controlled. respectable. We're confident the truth will come out today, he says into a small recorder. Vivian stands 5 feet behind him, clutching a tissue, speaking to a woman I recognize from their church. I just want my family back together, she says, loud enough for anyone walking past to hear. And then there's Celeste. She's not beside them. She's standing near the building's east wall, alone, arms crossed, staring at the ground. No phone in her hand, no performance on her face. When she looks up and sees me, something moves across her expression. Something I haven't seen from her before. Not hostility, not indifference. It might be fear. Or it might be the first honest thing she's felt in months. I don't stop. I walk past all 3 of them and through the glass doors. Eleanor is waiting in the lobby, briefcase in hand. Marcus stands beside her. Tweed jacket, silver hair, steady as stone. I take my place between them. Eleanor on my right, Marcus on my left. The courtroom is half full. 15 or so family members scattered in the gallery. 2 reporters, a court clerk, 2 U.S. Marshals near the door. Richard's legal team, 2 attorneys from a Hartford firm, settles at the opposite table. Richard takes his seat. He glances at Marcus, doesn't recognize him. Looks away. The door behind the bench opens. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrow presides. She is small, silver-haired, and moves with the economy of someone who doesn't waste words or time. Counsel, proceed. Eleanor stands. She doesn't rush. She carries a remote in one hand and a folder in the other. A projector hums to life behind her. Your Honor, this case begins with a death and a lie. The timeline appears on screen, 2 columns. Left, the original handwritten will, dated March 14th of the previous year. Notarized, witnessed by 2 individuals. Right, the Gordon Blake will, dated 11 months later. Filed with Fairfield Probate Court 3 days after Margaret Harrow's death. The will read by Mr. Blake was not written by Margaret Harrow. Eleanor clicks forward. The forensic handwriting report fills the screen. FBI certified document analysis confirms 99.7% probability. The signature on the Blake will does not belong to the deceased. Murmurs from the gallery. Aunt Karen leans forward. Uncle Dale removes his glasses and puts them back on. Eleanor clicks again. Bank records. 23 months of transfers. Highlighted. Annotated. $340,000 moved from Margaret Harrow's trust into a personal account controlled by Richard Harrow, each transaction authorized by a forged signature. Richard's lead attorney rises. Objection. The provenance of these documents was established by law enforcement recovery and federal forensic analysis, Eleanor says without turning. I have the chain of custody report here. Judge Morrow looks at the defense table. Overruled. Continue. Eleanor opens the folder. She holds up a photocopy, then reads aloud. I am writing this with full mental capacity. My son-in-law Richard Harrow and my daughter Vivian have been systematically stealing from my trust for 2 years. I fear that if I confront them, I will be silenced. The courtroom goes still. A reporter's fingers freeze over a keyboard. 2 family members in the second row exchange a look I can only describe as horror. Richard sits rigid. His jaw is locked. Vivian's hand moves to her throat, a reflex, not a performance. At the back of the courtroom, Gordon Blake shifts in his seat. He stands. Your Honor, I need to... Sit down, Mr. Blake. Judge Morrow doesn't look up. You are a material witness. You will remain seated until called. Blake sits. His face has lost its color. Eleanor turns back to the screen. This is not a family disagreement, Your Honor. This is a crime scene disguised as a will. Eleanor lets the silence do its work. Then she says, The people call Marcus James Whitfield. Marcus rises from the seat beside me. He buttons his jacket. One button, deliberate, and walks to the witness stand. His shoes are quiet on the courtroom floor. He doesn't hurry. Richard glances at him, frowns, looks at his attorneys. One shrugs. Marcus is sworn in. He sits straight, hands folded, and waits. Eleanor steps forward. Mr. Whitfield, please state your relationship to the deceased. Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow. Marcus looks directly at the gallery. His voice carries to every corner of the room. Margaret Harrow was my daughter. The courtroom doesn't erupt. It collapses inward. A sharp collective inhale followed by absolute silence. Aunt Karen covers her mouth. Uncle Dale turns to the woman beside him. The reporter's pen stops mid-word. Richard's head snaps toward Vivian. Your mother had a father? Vivian doesn't answer. Her face is white. Her lips are moving, but nothing comes out. Eleanor continues, steady. Mr. Whitfield, can you explain the circumstances? Marcus speaks calmly. He describes 1955, Ruth's death, the custody hearing, a 23-year-old man judged unfit by a court that didn't look twice, a 3-year-old girl carried out of his apartment while he stood in the doorway. I spent 15 years finding her, he says. I joined the FBI because I needed access to systems that had already failed me once. Margaret and I reconnected in 1992. We kept it private to protect her. And to protect Elise. Eleanor inserts the USB drive. The courtroom screen shifts to a video. A living room I recognize. Dorothy's house. Grandma Margaret sits in a chair, hands in her lap, facing the camera. Dorothy stands behind her. A notary sits to the left. Margaret speaks. Her voice is thin but clear. I, Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow, declare that any will produced by Gordon Blake after September of last year is fraudulent. I am of sound mind. My son-in-law and my daughter have been stealing from me. This recording is my testimony. She pauses, looks directly into the lens. And to my Elise, I'm sorry I couldn't say this while I was still here. But I'm saying it now. The video ends. The screen goes dark. Vivian makes a sound. Not a word. Not a cry. Something between the two. No one in the courtroom reaches for her. Richard pushes back from the table. This is a setup. That man is a stranger. He has no standing. Judge Morrow's gavel lands once. Sit down, Mr. Harrow, or I will hold you in contempt. Richard sits. His attorney places a hand on his arm. He shakes it off. Marcus looks at me from the witness stand. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. His eyes say the only thing that matters. I'm here. I lost my daughter once to the system, Marcus says, his voice quiet but unbending. I will not lose my granddaughter to the same family that stole my child's peace. The court reporter's fingers pause, then resume. The room holds its breath. Judge Morrow writes something. She doesn't look up. But I see her hand move. Steady. Purposeful. The kind of motion that precedes a ruling. Judge Morrow calls a 15-minute recess. The gallery stirs. People stand. Whisper. Avoid eye contact with Richard. I step into the hallway. Eleanor is reviewing notes. Marcus is speaking quietly with the FBI liaison near the water fountain. Then I hear footsteps behind me. Fast. Purposeful. Elise. Celeste. She's standing 3 feet away. Her eyes are red. Her hands are clenched at her sides. She isn't holding a phone for the first time I can remember. I want to testify, she says. Eleanor looks up. I look at Celeste. I search her face for the performance. The angle. The self-preservation. I don't find it. What I find is someone who has just watched the ground crack open beneath the only story she's ever told herself. I nod. Celeste Harrow takes the stand 10 minutes later. Richard's attorneys object immediately. The witness is a beneficiary of the contested will. The witness is testifying voluntarily against her own interest, Judge Morrow says. I'll allow it. Proceed. Celeste grips the edge of the witness box. She doesn't look at our parents. She looks at the judge. I knew the will was changed. Her voice shakes, but she doesn't stop. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew Grandma wouldn't have left Elise a broken house. She loved Elise more than any of us. A sound from the gallery. Aunt Karen pressing her hand tighter over her mouth. Dad told me to keep quiet. Mom said it was for the family. I believed them because it was easier than believing I was part of something wrong. She swallows. Dad told me, while Grandma was still alive, when she dies, everything comes to us. Not Elise. She's not built for it. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I took what was offered because that's what I was raised to do. She finally turns. Not to Richard. Not to Vivian. To me. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Elise. I'm telling the truth because Grandma deserved it. And because you're braver than I'll ever be. The courtroom is silent. Richard's face is a mask, rigid, bloodless. Vivian's chin is trembling. She reaches for Celeste with her eyes, but Celeste has already looked away. Richard's lead attorney leans to his colleague. Neither speaks. Judge Morrow makes a note. She looks at the defense table. Does the respondent wish to call any witnesses? Richard's attorney stands, pauses, sits back down. No, Your Honor. The gavel comes down. We'll proceed to ruling. I was the favorite. That's what Celeste said from the stand. I was the favorite. But being the favorite in that family meant being the most useful accomplice. Those words hang in the air like dust after a wall comes down. Judge Morrow takes 11 minutes. She returns to the bench, adjusts her glasses, and reads from a prepared statement without inflection, without pause, without mercy. This court finds the following. 1. The document filed by Gordon Blake and presented as the last will and testament of Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow is fraudulent. It is hereby declared void. Richard's attorney closes his eyes. 2. The handwritten will recovered from the Ridgefield property, dated March 14th, notarized and witnessed, is recognized as the sole valid testamentary document of the deceased. I feel Eleanor's hand press against my forearm. Steady. 3. Richard Allen Harrow is remanded to federal custody on charges of forgery, bank fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, and elder financial abuse. Bail will be determined at arraignment. 2 U.S. Marshals step forward. Richard stands. His mouth opens. Nothing comes out. 4. Vivian Marie Harrow is remanded on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and filing a fraudulent mental competency petition. Bail hearing to follow. Vivian's hands fly to her chest. She turns toward me. Elise, how could you do this to your own parents? I do not turn around. I keep my eyes on the judge. 5. Gordon Blake, Esquire, is charged with aiding and abetting the forgery of legal documents. His license to practice law is suspended effective immediately, pending formal disbarment proceedings. Blake sits motionless. The color has drained from his face entirely. 6. All assets held in the Margaret Harrow Family Trust are to be restored and distributed in accordance with the valid will. 7. Judge Harold Kern of Fairfield Probate Court is referred to the Judicial Review Council for investigation of misconduct. The gavel falls. Once. Final. The marshals approach the defense table. Handcuffs click around Richard's wrists. The sound is small, metallic, exact. He looks at me for the first time since the hearing began. There's no anger in his face anymore. Just the hollow recognition of a man who has run out of moves. Vivian is still talking. To the marshal, to the heir, to anyone who will listen. No one does. Marcus places his hand on my shoulder. I reach up and cover it with mine. Neither of us speaks. Walking out of the courtroom, I think about something. My grandmother sat alone in her house, surrounded by people who were stealing from her, and instead of giving up, she built an airtight case, sealed it in a wall, and trusted me to find it. She couldn't fight them while she was alive, so she made sure I could fight them after she was gone. I thought about that as I stood on the courthouse steps. How she knew the system would push back, how she planned for every wall they'd put up, how she turned a crumbling house into the one thing they couldn't bury. If you're listening to this and someone is making you doubt what you know to be true, that isn't confusion, that's control. And you don't owe silence to people who profit from it. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. Marcus stands beside me. The sun is low. The air is cold. He puts both hands in his pockets and looks at the sky. She would have hated the courtroom, he says, but she would have loved the ending. I don't feel triumph. I feel the weight of a truth that should never have been buried. Within 48 hours, the story is everywhere Fairfield County pays attention. The Register runs a follow-up. This time, not a press release. This time, the headline reads, Harrow family patriarch arrested for trust fraud, forged will, voided by federal court. Richard's quote from the courthouse steps, "We're confident the truth will come out today," is reprinted in the third paragraph. It reads differently now. Vivian's Facebook page goes silent. The comments under her last post, the matching sweater Christmas photo, the one about prayer and togetherness, have turned. You lied to all of us. You should be ashamed. The account disappears by Thursday. People who turned away from me at the funeral now call with warmth they didn't have before. I let the calls go to voicemail. I'm not bitter. I just don't have the energy to manage their guilt. Dorothy calls first, and Dorothy I answer. She's crying, which she almost never does. Margaret would be so proud, sweetheart. So proud. The sentencing details filter in through Eleanor over the following weeks. Richard accepts a plea deal. 8 years in federal custody. Vivian, 4 years. Gordon Blake, 3 years, plus permanent disbarment. Judge Kern resigns from the bench before the Judicial Review Council finishes its inquiry. The Fairfield Country Club revokes his membership. A small detail, but one Grandma would have appreciated. Celeste calls once. She doesn't ask for anything. She says, "I'm moving out of Mom and Dad's. I'm selling the Weston house. The one that was supposed to be yours. The money goes back to you." I close my eyes. Keep enough to start over, Celeste. That's what Grandma would want. A long silence. Then, I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but I want to deserve it someday. I don't tell her she's forgiven. That would be a lie and she'd know it. But I tell her the truth. Then start. That's all anyone can do. She hangs up. I set the phone down and look at the Ridgefield house around me. Half new, half old. The walls are going up where the walls came down. Frank's crew is sanding the new staircase railing. The house is becoming what it was always supposed to be. So am I. Marcus invites me to his apartment in Stamford, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick building near the harbor. Modest, clean, quiet. When I walk in, I stop. The walls are covered in photographs, not in frames, pinned, taped, layered over each other. Margaret as a toddler, black and white. Margaret at 18, laughing in front of a diner. Margaret at 40, the year she found him, standing in a park with her eyes closed and the sun on her face. And then, me, my high school play. I was a tree in the background of our town. I'm half visible behind a prop fence, but I'm there. And so is his camera. My college graduation. I'm walking across the stage. The shot is from across the street, through a crowd, slightly out of focus. But it's me, the day I started at the nonprofit. I'm carrying a box through the front door. I'm smiling at someone off camera. He was there. Every time. Margaret sent me the close-up photos, Marcus says from the kitchen. He sets 2 mugs of coffee on the counter. I kept the long-distance ones, to remind myself to be patient. I pick up a photo of Margaret, the one where she's in the park. She looks peaceful. She found you, I say. She found you, and she never told anyone. She told Dorothy, and she told the walls of that house. He sits in the chair by the window. She didn't trust people with the truth. She trusted things. Paper, metal, mortar. She knew things don't lie. We sit in silence for a while. It isn't empty silence. It's the silence of 2 people who have been looking for the same thing and just realized they found it. I'm 71, Marcus says. I don't know how many years I have left, but whatever I have, they're yours. I set my mug down. The Ridgefield house. When it's done, come live there. He looks at me. His eyes fill, but his voice stays even. Margaret always said that house would be full again someday. I reach into my bag and pull out a small box, the wooden one Dorothy gave me. I set it on the table between us. She also left you something. He opens it. Inside, beneath the photograph of M&M 1974, is a second item I hadn't noticed before, a folded slip of paper. He opens it, reads it. His hand trembles. He doesn't tell me what it says. I don't ask. But when he looks up, Something in his face has changed. Something has settled. Like a door closing gently after years of being left open. I have 28 letters I never mailed, he says. One for every birthday I missed. They're yours now. He gets up, opens the closet and pulls out a shoebox. 28 envelopes, each one dated, each one sealed. I take the box. I press it against my chest. Outside, the harbor catches the late light. Inside, the photographs hold the walls together. Vivian's letter arrives on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the sentencing. Handwritten. 3 pages. The envelope smells like the perfume she's worn for 30 years. Gardenias. I open it at the kitchen table in Ridgefield. Morning light coming through the new windows. Elise. I know you won't believe me, but I did what I did because I was scared. Your father controlled everything. The money, the decisions, the lawyers. I had no choice. I went along because the alternative was worse. You don't know what it's like to live under someone like Richard for 30 years. She writes about her childhood, her own mother's silence, the way compliance became survival and then habit, and then identity. She writes that she loved Grandma Margaret but was afraid of what Margaret saw. She looked at me like she knew exactly who I was, and I couldn't stand it. The 3rd page is an apology. I'm sorry I used your therapy against you. I'm sorry I signed that petition. I'm sorry for the Facebook post and the Christmas photo and the way I said your name at the courthouse. I'm sorry for everything I told myself was love but wasn't. I read it twice. I set it down. There are parts I believe. Vivian was afraid of Richard. That's probably true. But Vivian also designed the emotional architecture of every manipulation in this story. She chose who to call. She chose what to post. She chose to weaponize my trust. Fear explains it. It doesn't excuse it. I write back. 1 page. Mom, I read your letter. I believe you were scared. But fear doesn't justify what you did to Grandma and what you did to me. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I wish you well. But we won't have a relationship going forward. That boundary is permanent. I forgive myself for waiting this long to walk away. I don't owe you more than that. I seal the envelope. I write the address of the federal facility in Danbury. I walk it to the mailbox at the end of Birch Hollow Road and slide it in. I don't wait for a reply. On the walk back, Frank is on the porch. He's installing the last section of the new railing, cedar, hand-sanded, stained to match the original. He sees me and nods. Looking good, boss. I smile. It's small, and it's real. The first one that hasn't cost me anything in a long time. The trees along Birch Hollow are starting to turn. Orange at the edges. Gold underneath. The kind of beauty that only comes after something has decided to let go. 6 months after the trial, the house at 14 Birch Hollow Road is finished. New hardwood floors. White oak, the same species that was here in 1948. Fresh plaster walls. Windows that open and close without fighting. A kitchen with a gas stove, and a ceramic backsplash and a hook by the door where Grandma's old guest book hangs, blank pages waiting. Frank's crew works the final day in near silence, the way people do when they know they've built something that matters. Frank himself lays the last baseboard in the living room, the room where the false wall used to be. He runs his hand along the new surface, stands, and dusts off his knees. 22 years in this business, he says. This one I'll remember. I hang the photographs that afternoon. First, the original. Grandma Margaret, young, holding a baby, standing in front of this house when it was white and whole. I place it on the living room wall, exactly where the false wall used to be. Next to it, the 1974 photo. M and M, Margaret and Marcus, arm in arm, before the world pulled them apart. And beside that, a new one, taken last week. Marcus and me, standing on the finished porch. Dorothy behind us, hands on both our shoulders, laughing at something Frank said off camera. Marcus moves in on a Saturday. He carries 1 suitcase and a shoebox of letters. He takes the ground floor bedroom, the one with the window facing the garden Grandma planted decades ago. The rose bushes have been cut back and are already producing new growth. His first morning, I find him on the porch, coffee in hand, sitting in the chair I placed there, the exact spot where Margaret used to sit. He doesn't say anything. He just watches the yard. The quiet is comfortable, whole. That afternoon, Eleanor calls with the final numbers. Richard, 8 years, federal custody, no parole eligibility for 5. Vivian, 4 years, eligible for supervised release after 2. Blake, 3 years plus permanent disbarment. Kern, forced resignation, pension under review, the trust is fully restored. The Weston house sale closes next month. Celeste kept enough to rent a studio apartment in New Haven and enroll in a counseling program. The rest is returned. Total recovered, approximately $1.82 million. I don't look at the number for long. Money was never the point. The point was the truth. And the truth is sitting on my porch drinking coffee, watching rose bushes grow. Told you the house was worth saving? Frank says on his way out, toolbox in hand. Just needed someone who cared enough. I stand in the doorway and watch him drive away. Behind me, the house is warm and quiet and full of light. 1 year later, I stand on a freshly poured sidewalk in front of a converted farmhouse on the lot adjacent to 14 Birch Hollow Road. Above the entrance, a wooden sign reads, Margaret Whitfield Community Center. The building used to be a storage barn. Frank's crew gutted it, insulated it, turned it into something alive. 3 counseling rooms, a small legal aid office, a meeting hall with folding chairs, and a donated coffee machine that works half the time. The purpose is simple: free legal support for people facing financial abuse within their own families. Support groups for adults rebuilding after estrangement. Mentoring for young women navigating systems that weren't built for them. I didn't build this to prove anything. I built it because I know what it feels like to have the truth in your hands and no one willing to listen. The opening ceremony is small, about 60 people. Neighbors, former co-workers, a few clients from my old nonprofit. Frank and 2 of his crew members, standing near the back with their arms crossed and their eyes a little wet. Dorothy cuts the ribbon. Her hands shake. She laughs about it. Margaret would have done this faster, she says, and the crowd laughs with her. Eleanor stands near the door, hands in her coat pockets. She catches my eye and nods. The kind of nod that says, this was worth it. Marcus stands beside me. He doesn't speak during the ceremony. He doesn't need to. When I step up to the small podium, he places one hand on the back of my chair, the way a father does at a graduation. I look out at the faces. I keep it short. My grandmother hid the truth inside a wall because she had no safe place to say it out loud. This center exists so no one has to hide the truth again. It's not about revenge. It's about making sure the truth has a place to stand. Afterward, I notice a small arrangement of white roses by the entrance. No card. I know who sent them. Celeste. I leave the flowers where they are. They look right there. At the threshold. Not quite inside. Not yet. But present. Marcus stands in front of the sign for a long time after everyone else has gone in for coffee. He reaches up and touches the name, Margaret Whitfield, with the tips of his fingers. He doesn't say anything. Some things don't need words. They just need a place to exist. That evening, after the last guest leaves and the coffee machine finally gives out, I sit on the porch of 14 Birch Hollow Road. Marcus is beside me. 2 mugs, decaf. The sky is turning amber and indigo at the edges, and somewhere in the yard, the first fireflies of the season are testing their lights. She would have loved this, Marcus says. She planned it, I say. We just showed up. He chuckles, a quiet, tired sound. The sound of a man who has waited 70 years to sit on this porch. I look down at my wrist. The silver bracelet catches the last of the daylight. Thin, tarnished, ordinary. If you don't know what's etched inside. Vivian called it costume jewelry. She wasn't entirely wrong. It was a costume. It dressed a secret in plain sight and wore it for 4 decades. The bracelet held a code. The code opened a box. The box held the truth. And the truth held me up when nothing else could. I used to think family was the people who carried your last name, who sat at your table on Sundays. who showed up to your funeral and gave a eulogy full of words they didn't mean. I don't think that anymore. Family is Marcus, who photographed my life from across the street for 28 years and never once asked to be acknowledged. Family is Dorothy, who kept a wooden box in her closet for a year because a dying woman asked her to. Family is Frank, who delayed his invoices because he believed in the house before I did. Family is Eleanor, who picked up the phone on the first ring and never put it down. Family is the people who choose you, especially when choosing you costs them something. If you're listening to this and any part of it feels familiar, the dismissal, the gaslighting, the way your own family can make you feel like a stranger in your own life, I want you to know something. You are not wrong for wanting better. You are not selfish for drawing a line, and you are not alone. Even if it feels that way right now. The truth is heavy, but it holds you up. Grandma was right about that. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If it meant something to you, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. It helps more people find stories like this one. And if you're not ready to stop, I've left another story in the description below. I think you'll feel it the same way. I'll be waiting for you there. And remember, your truth matters.